How's it going, everybody? My name is Patrick. This is John. We are with Worship Gear Collective, and today we have a very special guest with us. I'm going to call you my friend because I've been talking to you for a couple of years now. So, my friend Spence Peppard. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen him in the forums, Gear Talk, Praise and Worship, just any other worship form and music form out there. Spence is an amazing guitar player. I think right now you currently play with Scotty McCreery, which I think we'll hear a little bit more about that as we move on. He's also played at the Grand Ole Opry, played a lot of really cool shows. He's done a lot of cool things. Super awesome guy, super nice guy, super funny. And we're just gonna take some time to get to know him. So, and you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, Spence? Kind of like where you
We should
started.
say we have been talking for a while and
Yeah.
we completely forgot to record because we've just been enjoying the stories so
Yeah,
much.
you guys missed it. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
over.
All right. Have
You
a good one,
missed the
guys. That's it.
podcast.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's it.
Have a good one. No, man. You
Man,
were just to catch everyone up. We were talking about how you got started and you said you wanted to really start the story where it got interesting. So you were working in Texas at a recording studio. It turned into session work. And
yeah,
it's just to kind of pick off there how it
yeah.
going.
Right out of high school, I got a job as an engineer. So I would engineer during the day and into the evening hours, and I would play drums. You know, when you're engineering stuff, I would have like people coming in, gospel artists, just wanting to record with a CD. You know, so they would come in and record. Just singing over, just an overdub session.
Mhm.
And that was a portion of the work. And then I would have country artists that would come in and they would want one song or two songs, sometimes full records. And so, I started off real, they were just kind of handing me the more basic, here's a sing along on a CD. Just track this with Miss Martha over here and make her happy. And so I'd pull some reverb up on her voice, and that's really all there was to it. But I realized that some of these artists, and like the Christian artists, they would record with a pre-recorded CD, but then they couldn't release it because they didn't own the rights to it. And mechanical rights are pretty expensive when it's a major hit, whether it be in country music or CCM. So I'd get the chance to re-record some of this stuff. And being a drummer as my first instrument, I would lay down a drum track, lay down the bass, do all the guitars. I was kind of late getting in the vocal game, doing BGVs, but eventually I had to learn to do that. So before I knew it, I was like the band. I was the
Yeah.
backing track for these people. And so that's kind of how this all got started as far as my whatever knowledge I have of engineering and session work. That's where it came from, was from this little studio in East Texas.
I think if there's one thing that I've like learned or heard over the years from people who do like just music professionally all the time, right? It's that when you're out on the road or when you work in a studio or whatever it is, you're not just a guitar player or you're not just a drummer. Like you do everything and you're expected to do everything. Like that's what it seems like, like background vocals, like you said, you had to learn how to do that at some point, and then you learned
Yeah,
guitar, you
in
did drums, bass.
in small towns, smaller studios, you run into that. Now in Nashville, they're going to call in
Oh yeah.
these session aces, and they're gonna, they've got their cartage and they're gonna do their thing. It'll be like a band in a room. And I did some of that in Texas. If it was going to be a bigger record and they had the budget, well, it made more sense from a time perspective to just go ahead and record everybody in a room on a tracking day or two,
Yeah.
and then wrap the whole record up. But if it was going to be an ongoing thing and they were writing the record and recording it as they went, a lot of times I would just, get in there in the room with them. And I also kind of learned the craft of songwriting, like what makes a song handy trade.
I mean, that's such a precursor though to what I feel like the modern musician has to do. Like it's such a flooded market with the internet and I mean, like even if you're in Nashville, like there's so many talented musicians down there. I mean, it's just crazy. Like
Yeah.
you gotta be able to do more than just play your instrument. It feels like nowadays, if you want to put videos out, you have to be able to edit videos, set up lights, edit, take multiple takes, write, be okay to say no to your own stuff by yourself, and like do all this extra just to even hopefully. I think for maybe some of like people that watch this, like get a shot. Your first thing might be just putting yourself on YouTube, showing you can play, like the Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
And so like I think it still rings true. If not, it's like the standard now that you have to be able to do a little bit of everything
I,
now.
I also think like YouTube in general has kind of like changed the game for a lot of things, like I think you had mentioned, you said like you said you started kind of like around the year like 2000-ish, right around there is when you kind of left college and
Yeah.
started doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it was such like a different time back, then and stuff like that. I say back then like that was a long time ago, but it's I guess like looking back, it is a long time ago, but it doesn't feel like that long ago to me. But anyway, I
Yeah.
still remember stuff. So, but like when I just think about like what YouTube has done for like the modern player, I think it's done like good and bad, right? Because there's like a lot of guitar players out there now who I've noticed like they just don't have an ear for anything because they just look up a video on how to do something and that's it. That's the end of it, right? So like they don't really know how to learn a lot of things, but at the same time, it's done like a world of things for people who are all in one, like a one-stop shop. Like I write my stuff, I produce my stuff, and I can put my stuff out here for people to see. And I just the internet's kind of really changed everything. I feel like for a lot of that,
Yeah.
but still finding those people who can still do all of that stuff are hard. It's hard to find. I think who could do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and some days I feel like a blacksmith because it's like I feel like I'm on the verge of getting replaced, by just what you can do on a laptop. But it's there's still a job for it. And then when it runs out, it's like, well, I guess I'll go do something else. We'll look at construction because they're still going to need houses until that gets automated. But
Hey, there's
I'll
3D printing that now. Do you see the house printers?
yeah, I know it. I've seen the house printers. I'm like, well, they're coming for everything.
Yep.
Doggone.
I need to
But
buy me a house printer.
man, it's really cool. I've always tried to embrace the technology as it changes
Yeah.
because when I started engineering, we were using ADAT tape, which was digital tape,
Yeah.
but there's no undo feature. And there were
Right.
many times I would be sitting there behind the control, an actual
Like a
mixing
desk.
desk at that
Yeah.
point. And we had this controller called a BRC. So that controlled 4 ADAT tape machines. Each one of them had 8 tracks. So the problem was if you were recording a band and they did a great take, they were happy with their take. If I left any tracks armed and I wanted to go back and say, well, let's punch the bass player just in this one little section where he messed up, I could roll back the tape. And if I didn't unarm those tracks, I would punch in over everybody's take.
Mm.
And so then it was like, you got to be creative and go, guys, on second thought, I was listening back. Man, I think we could do it one more time. Maybe
Right.
one more pass on it. Y'all okay? Okay, let's do it.
Yep. That's
Right.
fantastic.
So
And now
when the undo feature came around, it was glorious when we went to hard drive recording.
right.
Oh,
And
100%.
now you can produce an entire record with no offboard gear, nothing, and
No.
correct all your mistakes. it's
It's
crazy. Like
it's interesting too to like go back and listen to like Steve Miller Band. That there's a song, Keep on Rocking Me Baby. I think that's the song. You can listen to that take, and at the beginning, what the guitars are doing, they get off. There's a pretty good rhythm clam.
Yeah.
But that was on the heels of probably, I mean, who knows how many takes. And that one had to work vocally. That was the one with the path of least resistance for the drums and bass players. They were probably locked in on that take better than anybody else. And they had to go, there was a little whoops on the guitars, but overall it was the best take. Let's go with that one. So
I I was just watching a video the other day about that, like where like this guy was like pointing out like he brought up all these old songs, all these old records, and was just like pointing out like things that happened in the record that you can hear in the recording. There
Yeah.
is like you just had to know there was some producer who was just like, okay, we've recorded this 500 times. I'm out of tape. This was the best one. We're gonna leave it and call it good. Like,
Yeah.
Holding the tape.
Yeah. And
right,
I kind of experienced some of that, using tape. ADAT tape was, a little more forgiving in ways. You didn't get the degradation as when you would roll it back and roll it back. And,
right.
the more you played, 2-inch tape, the more it wore out and you lost top end, which some people like.
Yeah,
And I did go ahead.
I said, yeah, that's a thing for some people.
Yeah. It imparts character. I mean, now there's plugins where it's like, okay, what do you want the age of the tape to be?
Right.
But like I was using tape as well because there were archived projects I would have to go back to. So I got a chance to really learn all of the old tech and then start incorporating digital boards. We had some O2R Yamaha boards, which sounded fantastic. I got into Radar was a really great recording platform. Before Pro Tools was the industry standard, a lot of people in Nashville used Radar because it sounded great, but it was like it ran off of DOS. So that was,
Oh
there
yeah.
was no mouse. It was just like what you would check somebody out from JC Penney's on. That's what it looked like, the
Yeah.
screen. It was very
Right.
low tech. So yeah, getting into the modern age, it's like I love the new tech. I think I had number 48 Kemper that came over on the, whenever
Oh,
Sweetwater made
really?
their order. Yeah, it was one of the early toasters. It wasn't even finished. Like performance mode wasn't a thing. You couldn't even access certain features on the Kemper in the early stages.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was just, but what it did was light years ahead. Well, I wouldn't say light years, but it was like what Line 6 had done with the pod, which revolutionized, getting guitar signals easily,
Right.
but it just made it so much more realistic than what we had prior to that.
Right.
And I cut a lot of records on a pod. I know I showed y'all when we were
I
messing
say, yeah,
around the little the
I
pocket
love that.
pod,
It was
which
easily
which
available.
I also love that it's got the
Little belt
belt
clip.
clip. So
There
Yes.
you go.
Rock on the go.
keep it
That's
on
so
you.
cool.
Yeah. So you're on Pro Tools now, then I would imagine, as just
Yeah, I got Pro Tools and I keep what's the Logic, and I also have the Presonus
Oh,
for the
Studio
Studio
One.
One,
okay.
which is pretty good too.
I was say
Do you
we're
prefer
able
to
to
work in Pro Tools?
I do, mainly because as far as editing goes, it is the one I understand the most.
Mhm.
Sure.
And I feel like the way tracks are sort of handed back and forth in Nashville, it tends to be what most people lean on. I don't think it's the most stable these
Yeah.
days. I do run into some latent issues with track. Like even in a major studio, we were doing some stuff at Soundstage, and it was recording drums behind the click. So like what was actually going down was just off the whole time, and so
Right.
you're always kind of dealing with the updates and that sort of thing. But it's an evil that most people just decide to live with.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I'd say give it. Yeah, I would say Ableton seems to be pretty popular around the praise and worship scene right now. Everyone seems to be on Ableton of some sort, if they're not on Pro Tools, and it has its fun moments for sure.
Yeah. I feel like
yeah,
I always go back and forth between Ableton and Logic, and lately Logic has just been my go-to. I don't know. I just feel like I work
A lot of chances for
better and faster in Logic.
I feel like each one has their own strengths. We're on Ableton, obviously. Most people are that are on any kind of tour.
Right.
yeah,
Um, that's pretty much the touring standard now.
yeah,
Pro Tools is great for editing. Logic is great if you just want a simple, plug in a control surface and have all these great sounds at your disposal. It's a lot easier to get out of the box with Logic.
Right.
Um, I do feel like Studio One may have some interesting mixing capabilities as they're updating that. It seems to sound really good. And as weird as that is, I can pull up a session in Studio One and go, why does it sound wider than my Pro Tools session? But the ones and zeros are, I guess they're calculated differently. I don't know why, but I can get some better sounds with it.
Thank God for people who do that, right?
Yeah.
Down Reaper.
Right.
Exactly.
Media player. But
Yeah.
okay, so you were a Kemper guy. Are you still a Kemper guy? To ask some gear questions to you.
Love Kempers. I don't currently use the Kemper. We've got a rack of them on the road. Our steel guy is using it, and he also runs an electric through it. And we've probably got 4 or 5 out on the road, but I'm leaning on the UA pedals now.
Yeah.
And specifically on the road, I use the Ruby into the Aux Stomp.
Oh,
nice.
okay.
The Aux Stomp, I spent a little time with it, and I got one cabinet that I felt like sounded as close to a master session tone when I'm mic'd up in a major studio that I've ever had with any direct solution.
That's cool.
And that's kind of what I'm leaning on now. Now, if I'm at home and I'm recording late at night, I've got the Woodrow here, I've got the Dream, the Ruby, the Lion, all those, and I just kind of keep those for different flavors.
Right.
But for me, I love all of the different units. I recently got to hear I forget the name of it. It was based on the software, the Tonex.
Oh yeah.
Tonex sounds really good. Gosh, I feel like all the units, the Quad Cortex. I did a job with Dylan Scott's brother who plays lead for him, and I heard his Quad Cortex plugged in. I was like, man, that's a great direct tone.
Rad. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, any of these things can work. I feel like you just really have to decide, what you're used to. What do you want out of the thing? Because you can get across the finish line with any of this stuff now.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like, how much do you like, are you a tweaker? Like, do you want to like spend a lot of time tweaking stuff to make it perfect? Or are you somebody who wants to like turn the knobs and be like, oh, that's good enough. Okay, see you later. I feel like there's different
Right.
solutions for each one.
There really are. And that's one area where I feel like your guys that play the fractal stuff,
Yeah.
that's very, very tweaky. I've had one of those, and I like the sound of it. I kind of described that unit as high def guitar.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
a good tone. There was always this sort of sizzle on top of every tone that I had. It was nice, very pleasant. I felt like it would be like the ideal pop guitar rig.
Oh, yeah.
Because the more I tracked with it, the more I went, God, that like the pop stuff just seems to
Which I
just
think,
come out of this unit.
yeah, I think a lot of metal players actually use fractal also. So it's like,
I can
think
see that.
pop in metal, like I feel like is a big one.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The reason I've leaned on Universal Audio's guitar stomps or whatever you call those things is it's been the first sort of, I guess, modeler, whatever you want to call it, that I can stack. And this is my mix. Okay, I'm leaving my guitar realm and getting into more of a headspace of a mix engineer, because that's what I've done for 25 years in addition to playing instruments.
Right.
I don't like the way my Kemper, even if I would go through and pick different profiles, once I got more than about 2 tracks in, I didn't like the way it stacked. It just, there was this sort of homogenized thing that happened in the lower mids that I could never get around with any of the models. So I was always found myself reaching for a real amp, even when I was at home, even if the conditions were, everybody's trying to go to bed, but I got to lay down a guitar part really fast. There was enough difference, especially on cleaner tones, to where I couldn't get it. No matter how much tweaking I did, I couldn't get that tone out of any direct signal or processor that I had. So the first one that I was able to stack without kind of having that strange digital buildup was with the UAD pedals, and specifically the Dream. I don't like the Dream Live as much as I like the Ruby, but for records, I think you could track a record with the Dream, and it would be pretty nice. So I've
Yeah.
done some tracks with it, and it doesn't disappoint.
So I was gonna say, do you think you'd feel like you'd feel comfortable doing tracking with the Dream and the Ruby for an actual studio record, and you wouldn't really hesitate to like you'd be happy with that, not using an actual amp?
Yeah, I could. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, today I had a project that came up sort of last minute to where I don't really have everything set up to track real amps right now because I've been doing tour maintenance on stuff. So everything is torn apart up here.
Oh yeah.
And it's just not a good time. So what I did is today, as a matter of fact, earlier today, as soon as I got home, I took the Ruby, I took the Dream, and I took the Woodrow, and I tracked 3 parts, one with each one of those units, kind of a different guy for each track.
You like
And
double
there's
track.
enough, yeah. And really, I wasn't really doubling anything. It was just tracking mono, this guy over here, this guy over there, kind of
Gotcha.
similar but different parts, and then one a little more centered with that Woodrow is just kind of a real beefy low end. The Woodrow is interesting. It doesn't sound like some of the tweeds that I've tracked with, but it does sound like a tweed that I've heard before with sort of the stock speaker. So it does this kind of I don't know. It's hard to say, but like some of the heavier tones, I will track with that Woodrow, and it seems to work better.
I think
And
that's.
it's
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say it sits in a track really well.
I think that speaks though. I mean, like, cause I was a Helix LT guy for a long time, their floorboard, and I just switched to a hybrid pedals and the stomp because I liked the. I'm used to it. I didn't want to go too crazy. Patrick knows
Yeah,
it was like a week of I had an LT and 12 guitars. I sold 6 of them and I built a board and I changed the board iteration twice. I had like a panic attack or a midlife crisis of tone, but it's interesting that because like that was something that our friend Jake, who was on last time, had said. He has dual tone X's. He runs stereo tone X's, and he was
yeah, yeah. I know
asking.
Jake.
Oh, okay, no way.
Yeah,
That's not surprising. Everyone seems to know who Jake is, but I asked him, and that's kind of one of the things of our whole channel and like what we try to preach. Like, I love that you said you think of it from a mix standpoint, because like when I work with high school students or people, in their music stuff, I always tell them like, yes, you can have the best tone in the room, but like, how does it work with the bass player? Like, think of your mix, think of how you're gonna sound, how you complement each other. It's a worship experience,
yeah,
not the John Guitar Show. So I love that you said that, but I mean, for the people watching, like you don't play not just to call it what it is, you don't play like these like small bar shows. You play big venues. You have an amazing career that you have and you're still going and it's like you're using an amp pedal that's like less than $500. It's $400 to the average person and you're saying it rules. And I think that's something for like a young kid watching or like, a kid who's saving up for his first real legit board like man, $400, you don't have to have the crazy $4,000 hand wired Vox amp. You can rule it with just a UA Ruby,
I'll say, don't get me wrong, those hand wired Vox amps are sweet, and
I'll take one.
I,
No, no,
I
no.
love I love tube amps, but like it's cool though, like when you talk to like some of the professionals, like you and like Jake and stuff like that. It's like I don't know, yeah, they're using. It's like they love tube amps too, but they're also using UA Rubies and Dreams and whatnot too.
yeah. It's all very doable, and like I say, I try to embrace the tech, and a lot of guys do because it also makes good sense from your crew's perspective. Because if you can imagine, like I could take out 2 amps and have road cases for all that stuff.
Yeah,
It takes up room in a tractor trailer rig. Okay, so you run into issues where your crew chief may be going, okay, we're bringing out LED panels this year. Okay, we've got to have
Right.
a little more space to the right of the trailer, and we're kind of running short on space and then time. If we're headliner, which most of the time Scotty headlines, which is nice, but like last year, the early part of the year, we went out with Brooks and Dunn as direct support.
Yeah, that's cool.
One of the things that sold us on getting that spot, in addition to Scotty's career itself, was the fact that we could be off the stage, off the decks in 7 minutes. So if you got two matchless amps and then a loom going to this huge pedal board, it's just another road bump into getting all of this stuff off. And there's a danger when you bring out really nice gear like that. You've got hands that are always helping at these shows. Okay. They don't know you. They don't care who you are. They're there for one reason. It's to get your tail end off of that stage as fast as possible.
Yeah, and they probably don't even know how much you spent on all that either. Like,
That's not a diss to those union guys either. Like, we need them for sure. And it's like,
no, we gotta have them. We gotta have
so
them.
important. And I can't think, like, watching at like theaters in Detroit, how they work, like, it's crazy. Like, seeing people just 1,000 miles an hour to get like massive set changed.
You know what I think is funny too? I never thought about this perspective. Sorry, like I thought about kind of what we were talking about, but you said that one of the things that got Scotty the gig with Brooks and Dunn was the fact that you guys could get on and off the stage so quickly. Like that was just one of the factors. I never thought about that. Like I never thought about like that being a factor. I was just like, hey, this guy's great. We'd love to have him. Like kind of, I didn't know there was really much more to it.
If we would have said it takes us 20 minutes or 25 minutes to get off the stage, now as bad as they wanted him on that tour, they would have had to move on to the next guy. We got to get somebody that can get off a little bit faster. And we had more time than that. But the fact that our guys could consistently get off in that amount of time,
that's crazy.
It's pretty quick. And so, there's a lot that comes with that. There's, guitars are moving fast. Pedal boards are getting shuffled and they're getting thrown onto risers so that those can then be trucked off the stage. And like you say, we need the union guys, but their main focus is not to protect your gear. It is, I mean, you look around one of these shows at the end of it, there's just tons of people in hard hats.
It's crazy.
Riggers. And there's a lot. This thing is bigger than you and the tone that you like in your ears. And so you have to come as a player to the point where you go, this is not my show. I'm not Keith Urban getting to go, I'm going to use a Dumble and I'm going to use, a Marshall. I've got to make this thing make sense. So I had everything down to one pedal board, and it was a large one. It was not a small board, but one loom, I could unplug 4 things and I'm out of the way. Drop a top on it, throw it on the drum riser, and we're out. And so that might have saved us 2 or 3 minutes being able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially if they got to load a whole new drum set on stage, like props and stuff, or whatever you want to call it, stage effects. Like watching, I got to see a pretty big band at DTE. Oh, it was Fall Out Boy. And watching Fall Out Boy, I don't know why I said that like no one knows who they are. Like watching their set, because they had a Broadway designer do their stage design, and they had set changes throughout their show that were going behind them. It was seeing the semi trucks at the back of like Pine Knob was, I've never seen it before. It was crazy, like to see how many parts or how many guys. Cause like, I mean, they had 3 60-foot semi trucks just with stage gear.
Yeah,
counting all the other stuff they have to bring with them.
So I got to ask, because I've always been curious, and now I have the opportunity to ask somebody who does it. So playing with somebody like Scotty, right? So you're playing with like a bigger name person in the country world. Actually, I would say one of the biggest names right now. So you're playing with somebody that to that caliber. How much of the stuff that, say, like if you wanted to try something, right? So like say like you wanted to buy the new Kemper profile player or whatever, right? Like, is any of that stuff like stuff that is that all stuff that you kind of come out of pocket for, or is that stuff that kind of like Scotty's management things will be like, hey, you're our guitar player, whatever you want to try, we'll kind of take care of that? Like, is there anything like that happens, or is it all kind of on your own?
It falls on the responsibility of the player.
Okay.
You know, if you're going to take the gear out, and see it, the way I look at this is, if I were a contractor, and I was running a crew, there's a price of entree to get into any kind of business. So if
Right.
this is my business, if you're going to start a business, then you have to factor in operating costs.
Right.
And it's a very real thing because, I mean, even though I'm using a Ruby, I'm using an aux stomp, and those are fairly affordable pedals. Well, the affordability goes away when you have to start making duplicates of things for backup.
Yeah.
You have to like, I've got a MIDI switching system, so I've got it racked up in Guitar World now so that it's off the deck. All I've got is a MIDI switcher, a volume pedal, and a tuner on stage. And so doing all that stuff, there's a lot of costs, and then guitars and that sort of thing. But I just go, you know what? However many thousands it costs, and this year it was, to do some upgrades. You just have to pony up to it and just go, this is my operating cost.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, how many pair of the in-ears do you have to bring on the road with you? People never think about extra in-ears if stuff goes down. Like,
right. And that's very real because right now, and sometimes in-ears fail on their own just from use, or like my stupid self, I got snagged on something, and it widened the hole where the cable goes in. So it's like, okay, I got to send off my good ears. I've got some great backups, but most people, it's expensive to come out with ear molds. So to have backups, what are you talking about? That's crazy.
Right.
But it's got to be close enough to the sound of what you're used to where you're not having to build an entirely different mix, because you really don't have time for that. And as y'all probably know, you change out some ear monitors and your mix, it's like all of a sudden, oh, I need less bass, I need myself up, and the mids are focused in a different place, which changes the levels of everything in your head. So you got to have some backups that are close to what you're used to. So yeah, that's a great point, because that's just one of the many things that can fail while you're out there.
yeah, I had Shure 215s for like 6 years, and I just got these these moldeds. And like, yeah, the first Sunday I remember having them, I was like, oh, what? I sound like crap. Like, oh, that's what I sound like. That sucks. But it was such a huge difference, but like, that's the thing. But like, at the end of the day, like the pony up thing, like, it's your job. Like, that's how you make your living. Like, everyone has costs when it comes to like their career and stuff, like financially. Like, your full-time job might be a 9 to 5, and you have to buy dress clothes for work. I mean, that's just part of it. So it's just give and take depending.
Yeah.
Right.
And I should say this too, to be fair, whenever our camp, before I came on board, when they decided to take guitar amps off the deck and go with Kempers, that is a purchase that Scotty made. So I could choose to plug into a Kemper and spend the night on one that's already racked up. It's just that for me to accomplish what I'm wanting in my ears and what I'm used to and what I know works out front, I want to use my own tools. And so that's my cost. But he has provided, plenty of rack mount units that I could use at any time. And honestly, I can lean on if I have something go down, one belt pack handed to me, and then I'm back in business. So it's all there.
So I have to ask, I was looking at your Instagram today just to get a little more caught up. I believe I saw you do a solo with a American flag Les Paul. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That was so much fun to watch. So if I wanted to ask you about gear though, are you a Les Paul guy mostly? Like, what's your go-to kind of rack of guitars or for your touring?
Okay. This is a great question, because even though I play whatever the job calls for, like I don't, the only way I'm unhappy is if I've got a guitar and I'm playing a song that it doesn't fit sonically. And then I just can't get rid of it fast enough. So with Scotty stuff, most of the time, humbuckers, it's a no-go. Especially with his new record, because it is such a throwback to 90s country. And it'll be out, I think, end of May. He'll have that coming out. And when you hear it, you'll go, oh my gosh, it sounds like Brooks and Dunn, Alan
Good old bass
Jackson,
country.
Garth Brooks. This is in fact, to that point, I actually finally had to break down and get the old G bender put on my Telecaster.
Oh man,
Hey, there you
that's
go.
sweet.
But it was an absolute must for especially this year, and I've put off doing it. I hate that I did because I'm loving it, but yeah. So even though a Tele is what I use day in and day out, with an occasional Les Paul thrown in there for a couple of songs, I like the feel of a Les Paul scale under my fingers as a lead player. So if I'm doing a lot of lead work, man, it's just Les Paul with 10s or 11s. I'm happy. If I'm playing rhythm parts, I like a longer scale, 25 and a half, like a Fender scale, Tele or Strat. I enjoy that. If I've used a Duesenberg on occasion, which I've had great luck with. I think those are great sounding guitars. So it just really kind of depends. But if it didn't matter sonically and I was just basing something totally off feel, I would probably go with a Gibson scale to start with.
Okay. Nice.
And you have a couple Elliots too, don't you?
Yeah, so that's what this guitar I just held up. That's the one I brought home. Now, this is a downside to touring is most of your stuff stays out on the road and
Ready to go.
all sorts of weather. Yeah. But yeah, this is an Elliott ET. This is one Andy that built the beginning of last year. And yeah, it's a great instrument. And I hooked up with Andy back in, gosh, it was probably 10 years ago or so. He was at a trade show in Atlanta, and I just picked his stuff up and went, I mean, this fits me. It's a guitar that's ready to go to work. And he's a great guy. And that's part of it too. It's like I love his instruments and I like him as a person, and I want to support small businesses. I get the chance to do, I could run away with another brand and probably have some stuff handed to me, but I'm going to have to go get that stuff set up and make myself happy with it. Andy's stuff is ready to go from my hands. So there's nothing like that required.
Right. Yeah. Elliots are super nice. I've always wanted one. I've always wanted to try one too. Yeah. They're really nice guitars.
They are. And if we ever see each other in person, hopefully we will coming up soon.
We can say, when you're in Detroit, you'll have to let us know. We'd love to come check it out and get some FaceTime with you.
Absolutely. And y'all can play whatever I've got. You can play it.
No, you won't twist my arm.
In the 20 minutes show swap.
Yep. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been it's super cool. And like honestly, I've been getting so as a new country fan, I have to admit, this last year I've been getting into country. Which is I grew up in like a small town where country was super popular. And I think just growing up, I was like, no, like I'm not gonna be like the people around me. Man, I didn't realize like how much I was missing out on people like Brad Paisley and like just like the monster guitar players that hide in country. I think Hyde being a metal kid, you think that like country is not that intense like musically, but like there are some massive players in country, and it's so interesting. Yeah. I really enjoyed country and just getting to know it and stuff. And so it's interesting to hear like the thought process. I mean, the fact that like I can't tell you, I don't own a reverb pedal until like 2019 because I just didn't need it.
Yeah. Man, I'll say this regarding the facility required to play some of this country stuff. I've only had a couple of instances in my life where I just absolutely could not learn a part. And one of those instances was playing a guy named Mark Broussard's song. He had a song called Rock Steady, and there's a solo in that song that no matter how much I practiced, I couldn't get it. The second one was a song that I was supposed to learn for this tour that we're doing with Scotty, because they did this throwback 90s country. Derek Wells did a lot of the guitar parts, and he does a solo on this song, the very first song on the record. And no matter how much I slowed it down, I couldn't play the part. I could not play the solo. And I even told Scotty, I was like, this is the fastest I've ever had to play in my life. with the cleanest tone. So you don't have
Nothing to hide.
sustain in your favor.
Right.
And when I slowed it down, I realized, I mean, Derek is dang near a banjo player. He's doing these banjo rolls and hybrid picking. And that was not really in my toolbox for a long time. I mean, I grew up loving pop music. I was a Phil Collins fan. And it
Right.
wasn't until I got into Phil Kagi as a guitar player where I started focusing on finger picking. But I never got the hybrid thing that a lot of these country guys do. It was
Mm.
just that was lost on me until recent years. So I'm way behind the eight ball when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I'm still learning every day how to be a proper country player because man, it is challenging. It
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so challenging.
I think I was listening to an Andy Wood podcast. He's talking about playing like on 13s on an acoustic like that, having to roll and figure out those banjo movements on a giant acoustic. And that's
Oh
like
my gosh.
so ridiculous, those guys. Like you just have no idea. But do you think so like in the worship, so you're a church guy, you enjoy the the occasional church song or whatever. Have you found like any overlap in those two like worlds of country and worship as far as like playing and stuff goes, or does it feel pretty separate?
Well, I do feel like so it's an entirely different
Mhm.
approach from at least my current gig with
Yeah,
Scotty because
Sure.
I am obviously I'm using time-based effects. We're covering, I mean, Scotty's been at it now for gosh, going on 14 years. So he's got some records under his belt, which means he's seen some stylistic changes. So some of the earlier stuff, middle stuff, and then the current stuff, it requires different needs
yeah,
out of time-based effects, out of modulation and that sort of thing. So there are some overlaps where I'll be using some heavier verbs and delays and things that I would use in a worship set.
yeah,
Um, but a lot of time I feel like we're really basing it off of a clean tone, and it's stuff that's not necessarily clean. I'm using some overdrive, but
Right.
sometimes that kind of prints as clean in a mix,
Yep.
because it's got twang to it and it sounds cleanish once you throw it into of the full context of a band.
yeah,
Worship, I feel like well, really my basis for any artist that I'm going to support. I don't care if I'm playing on a praise team on a Sunday or I'm learning new music for an artist. I'm going to sit down with the record and I'm going to try to tone match with my ear and go, what do they got going on here? Is this guy using a matchless? Is it a deluxe? What's our tonal center? And then just sort of try to copy their effects as well as I can to best replicate it. So I do very different, or I have different approaches for one versus the other, but it always comes down to sitting down with my computer with monitors, like near field monitors that I know and I trust. So
yeah.
I
Right.
know when I dial the tone here at home through these monitors, I know 100% it's going to work in every other venue.
I always dial through my monitors. Like whenever I'm dialing the sound, it's always through my my monitors in front of me.
Yeah. I think it's important to have some, whether it be headphones, in-ears, or monitors that will translate in other places.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter the style of music that if you're learning Meshuggah or you're practicing for learning some a Bethel song on a Sunday
Yeah.
morning, whatever it is, just knowing your monitors so that you can tonally go in and try to match what was done on that record, because these guys that are on these records are great players and they know tone.
Mhm.
Well, and really, I think like what you just said, like, is what really separates like the pros from. I don't mean this like demeaningly, but like the pros from like the average Joe. It's like the people who could sit there and be like, okay, I need to listen for this. This is the amp I'm listening for. This is the sound I'm listening for. This is how I'm going to match this. Or like even when it comes to like coming up with your own thing, you just know what you want to hear, and then you just make your stuff achieve that. It's like
Yeah.
exactly what you are looking for, and like you take the time to do that. And I think that's really what separates a lot of the, like you said, people who do this professionally and people who just kind of do it, for whatever. Neither one's bad. Like neither, being professional is not a bad thing, and being like an average Joe is not a bad thing. But like I just think that's really like the separation line there is like the people who like take that time to really listen to the intricacies of small things and adapt to it.
Well, and I think what y'all are doing with this podcast and what others do, I think is so important because from when I started playing in church, which was early 90s, to the level of professionalism now, because of the awareness of different players that guys like y'all bring to guys that aren't professionals. I think
Right.
that's very important because we've reached in a lot of churches a level of professionalism that I never saw when I was playing in the early 90s. It
Right.
just and myself, I didn't know how to get some of these tones because I didn't have a benchmark. I was a small town. I was around some great players, but I might have a PV Classic 30, and that's all I had at my disposal in the early
Yeah.
days. Even before that, I had a solid state amp, and so you know, it was like I always felt like the cost of an amp. And really when I got into it, that's when the boutique craze started taking
Right.
off, and I
Yeah.
started chasing it hard, only to realize that I can actually kind of do everything I need with a cheaper Vox and a deluxe. I mean
Yeah.
that covers a multitude right there. So,
Right. Yeah, I
but
think that's the big thing too, is that like the other, the professionals, they can get the sound that they want out of pretty much whatever.
Yeah.
Like a good player can make anything sound good pretty much.
If you
You
give
know.
Tiger Woods a set of Target golf clubs, he's still Tiger Woods. Like
Yeah.
he's still gonna play better golf than you. It's one of
yeah,
those, like I think even with the modeling stuff, like you can go on Tone Factor, which is like the Bethel guys like side business, side hustle, and like you can go get his Helix patch for like $14. And if you're like a young person or you're new to it, regardless of age, like it's a good starting point to get. He's like, hey, the
yes,
Bethel guy made a Bethel patch for your Helix, like probably be closer than what you if it's your first time ever making a tone. Just
yeah.
a lot.
And I think it's a good thing for younger players to have a benchmark for what works on a record. So,
Yeah.
um, any of these players, just name them. If they're selling different patches, get those patches and kind of study what they've got going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need to learn how to work the gear yourself. You don't need to be 100% reliant on everybody else to provide your tone, but it's such an important tool to get that stuff and then dissect it and go, what's going on here? Because these guys are used to making records and they know how it's going to fit in a mix. They're great at writing parts. They're
Yep.
great at layering multiple parts together in a cohesive manner and then achieving the tones that it takes to be good enough to be delivered to what you hear when you stream their music. So
Yep.
I think it's good to break that stuff down.
That's what I've always done. Like when I used to have a Helix a while ago, and I would always like the first thing I did was like, I'm just gonna buy a couple patches. I have no idea how this thing works, but I'm gonna figure it out. And that was the whole point of me buying the patch, was not to like it wasn't just to like, hey, I just want to copy this and sound like this. It's like I want to understand how these guys are getting these
Mhm.
great sounds out of this modeler. It's like 'cause I don't know how they're doing it. I want to learn how to do it. So like that's
Yeah.
why I would just buy a patch and look at it and be like, okay, how are they doing this? Why are they doing this? What is this one little block doing? Like just
Yeah.
trying to figure that stuff out. And I'm happy I did that because for me it made like a kind of, I don't know, made dialing in a whole bunch of other things that I've purchased since then a lot easier and a lot it just made more sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great training, kind of like, um, having plugins in Pro Tools has been good for, yeah, well, I've talked to several students of different universities that are in recording programs, and being able to put your hands on an actual 1176 or an LA2A or whatever it is in the digital realm is great, because once you end up in a studio that's actually got that stuff, you got
Yeah.
a starting point now. You
Yeah.
you kind of have a benchmark set. If I turn these two knobs, this is going to be the result. And what you realize is when you do actually get the you know real version in front of you, it may be a little bit different. It may react a little bit different than what you're used to, but you've got a starting point and you have a benchmark, and that is key.
Right.
And then you can decide then from that point on, okay, is the hardware version better than the software version? Blah blah blah. There's plenty of people that can get into the weeds
sure.
on that stuff,
Yeah.
but the fact is, it's kind of a great place to learn how to learn the trade, learn how to tweak this stuff. So I think it's important.
For sure. I
Yeah.
think this is a good segue to the next part. We were talking about this before. So, I mean, just about affordable gear and like a starting point and like all the things we've just talked about, like and solid. You said solid state amp, which made me think of it. We talked about, and you guys have seen it before. It's and I call it the Anderton's challenge to give credit where credit's due. Um, Spence, it's the you're at Sweetwater, a truck backed into you. Somehow your guitar, your pedal board, and your amp all got trashed, but your cables, and your power supply stay safe or whatever. You have $1,500 just to quickly get some gear to go play a gig. I mean, let's just say it's like your Scotty gig, and we're gonna pull up Sweetwater real quick.
So, and just to
Okay.
put a little clarification on the rules here. So it's $1,500.
Okay.
That includes your guitar. So you have to get a guitar in there for 1,500.
Oh, I got to get a guitar. Okay.
Yep. And what was the other stipulation, John? Was it?
It has to be in stock. It can't be back
Oh,
ordered.
yes, it has to be in
Like,
stock.
like we're pretending you have to actually go play the gig this evening. Like it's like 11 in the morning. You're at Sweetwater. You have a few hours to get some gear and then head over to sound check. Essentially.
Okay. Okay.
I think this could be fun to
And
hear how you.
There's only one other stipulation that we want to add to that, and that there can't be any all-in-one units. So like you can't have like an HX stomp which has like multiple effects. You can still go ahead and go with like a modeling pedal if you want, like an ACS
Okay.
one or like a Ruby or a Dream or whatever. But you can't have any like all-in-ones.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, interesting to see how people would get through their gig. And I'm gonna take the wheel on Sweetwater for you, so you can just.
Do we want to go ahead and register for that stomp giveaway?
We might have to.
I mean, we might as well. Maybe we can then spend that money somewhere else.
Right.
But so what would be if you had to go in and buy a whole, like, get it done for this one gig? Obviously you're going to be going direct, so I don't think you're worried about getting stage sound. It sounds like, just from what you've been talking about using rubies and stuff. Or is that something?
Yeah, and so I mean, all right. So I could pick 100 different options as far as amps go. But I'm gonna stick with what I'm currently using. It's what my front of house guys used to. It's what I'm used to, and I kind of know how it reacts to pedals. So let's throw a Ruby in there.
Throwing love to the front of house guy. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have a good relationship with your front of house.
100%.
And especially Tom Graham, he is fantastic, but we hear the same stuff. So,
right.
What are you guys mixing on right now? What's your guys' board for touring?
Gosh, I should know that. And I don't.
I would imagine it's probably like
I'm embarrassed
of some sort.
Yeah, my buddy is a Midas guy, and so he's been going with a Heritage, and I got to see him mix when he was in town, and those are crazy.
Yeah, and this is something too that I find interesting about myself. I actually, even though I've done engineering as the trade, I hate engineering. I hate mixing. Like I cannot stand it, but I still find myself saying yes to work and doing it. But once I broke away from doing that full time, it was like, y'all can have it. Keep up with all the updates, whatever happens.
Right.
Okay. So we've spent $399 of 15.
And I'll be honest, there is a little bit of wiggle room. So like as close to 100 as possible.
Well, we'll see if we can stick pretty close to it. All right. Well, I don't need a ton of overdrive, but I do feel like, all right, let me ask you this. Do they carry those Nobles?
The ODR1?
ODR1.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do.
Okay.
Oh, it doesn't help that I can't type.
Type ODR1. They probably also have the mini.
Mm-hmm.
I
know they have
the
mini.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got both of these on my board right now. I'm using the gold for lighter overdrive, and then I'm using the green for my lead tone.
Nice.
Here's what we're going to do for the sake of this gig. We're going to buy the green one because it's got a bass switch, which I'm going to use. So
They have a mini. You want to
I
save
don't like the mini. I couldn't make the mini work. And maybe it was
Oh,
a
okay.
weird, maybe I just had a weird circuit on the one that I got, but I
Right.
know the big one is gonna, those are
Mhm.
I mean, that is
consistent
the
ish.
Nashville drive.
It's it's gonna be something that will get us through the night. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So
I'm
we fill those
also
in.
going to need a lighter overdrive. Let's peruse, let's browse, let's see what they have to offer.
A few hours to
I,
set.
I gotta ask Spence while we're doing this. Have you
Yeah.
tried the Brown Amps Protein?
Yes, I've owned a couple of them.
What
Sure have.
what do you think of it? I'm assuming you liked it if you owned a couple, but
Man, here's the interesting thing about the protein. It works great for some people. It didn't stick around for me, but I did sell it to my bass player, and it's working great on his bass guitar. So
I
okay.
haven't heard anyone use the protein on a bass yet.
Yeah.
Good to
Yeah.
I only learned about it. I'm happy you said Patrick's a diehard uh
Protein guy.
Yeah. So I
It's
only
been
did
great for
about
me.
it from him. So
it
that's
lets a fair amount of bottom end through.
Yeah.
It doesn't close the aperture too much. So on bass, it's really been that
got
was the win.
good bass pedal. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's see. What have we got here?
Want to set a
Is
price
it,
limit? Do you want to do anything to kind of
dude, I
brands you want to look at?
you know what? I'm not a big tube screamer guy. Let's just roll down here and just see what we've got, because we might pull something in that's kind of, I do like the iMaster metal pedal just because it's wrong, but I'm not gonna go that route.
A hero if you went with a obscure one like that.
I'm pretty dangerous. Sometimes I'll take a chance on stuff, but we got a lot of good options here. Some of these things would work. Let's go to page 2. All right. I'm gonna make a deal with myself. First 2 pages, I'm gonna pick something.
Love it.
Okay. All right, because we the gig's coming up and we don't have a lot of time
Yeah.
to mess around. Okay, I've tried some of these.
So what are you kind of looking for in terms of like style? Are you looking for more of like a boost, or are you looking for like
Something very lightish. Would a Mojo get me in the blues breaker territory, do you think?
I don't know a lot about the Mojo. I feel like it would. It's the Paul Gilbert. Let's take a look. I like how impossible to find out. We can't read it at all. This drive light.
Man,
you could also go with the Morning Glory, tried and true.
we
That's
could.
$200.
We could do a morning glory. Let's do that. Let's throw Josh Scott a little love here.
We're
let's
big
plug.
page here. Josh G. Ward.
Let's throw him. That's a great thought. I'm glad you mentioned that.
We're big
Blues breaker
fans here.
See, and we know that pedal. We know it's going to work.
Tried and true.
It's tried and true. That gets it done. All right, we're throwing that in. That's another $200. So what have we got left?
717.
What did you say?
You're 717.
Yeah.
717.
Doing pretty good actually so far.
We're doing really
Okay. We haven't bought a tuner yet. There is no more important pedal than a tuner.
Yeah.
Here's what we're gonna do. Do they have a Peterson clip-on tuner?
I was gonna say, you know what? They were gonna throw you in like a little clip-on tuner because they felt bad.
I feel like the Strobo clip may be the way. Yes, $59. That gets it done. I like it.
Throwing some love to the clip tuner.
That's a strobe clip, so that's even better.
Cool.
That gets it done. And also, it's always good to have backups of these things, because I've broken 2 or 3 of them. But I do like them. I do like them for acoustics and that sort of thing when you're tracking.
Right.
All right. So we got to buy a guitar now, right?
I think it's time.
Do you want any reverb or delay or anything too, or no?
Um, gosh,
Or they come
yeah.
back to it after the guitar?
Let's come back. We really got to think the guitar through, I feel like.
We have quite a bit left too. We're at 7-6. We're doing great, honestly.
Okay.
So are you
All right, so
selling
we're gonna go
hollow?
probably need to buy. Do they still make those classic vibe
Yes, they
guitars?
do.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they're awesome.
It's a pretty safe bet. For in the world of Chinese instruments, that's one that I feel like they don't just let anything leave the assembly line. We could order one of these things and it would work. So we'll probably go. All right, there's a oh, those are some baritones mixed in there.
Oh, that's a cool
Are you,
paranormal
are you
offset.
thinking Telecaster? Because that's kind of what you're used to.
Man,
In oh, that's a cool one.
I know it. I'm looking at that Jazz Master going, huh, that does it'll twang, it'll do some great leads,
The
but you know what?
paranormal offset.
I think I'm gonna keep it down straight down the middle. Let's do a Telecaster and but let's pick something other than a Sunburst. What else have we got? Oh, wait a second. What have we got down here in green?
This thing
Contemporary Telecast. Man,
got
I
a
don't know
hot
if
rod or a hot rails in the bridge and a humbucker in the neck.
gosh, I love that. I love the look of that so much, but I know it would be the wrong choice.
Right.
Just now.
But
No.
you know, the gig's coming up. I need to make a decision. All right, let's do this. Let's get that blonde one. Let's get that blonde telly down there. Is that a
Here?
classic vibe? Yeah.
Yeah.
50s. Let's do the 50s. We're
That's
gonna,
also like $20 cheaper than the other one too.
yeah.
You know what? If we are feeling strapped for cash, they have a used one for $375. So
If that's an option, I'll do the used 100% of the time.
You
I
want
might be-
add
I
the
might-
used one in there.
Yep. Because one thing that I've had to do over the years is become my own guitar tech. And if I got to fret level something, I carry one of those StewMac fret kissers with me.
Yeah.
And the Elliots are solid. Those are stainless steel, so I don't have to worry about that. But if it's ever like if I've got a Strat on the road for certain things,
Oh,
I've had to take down a high fret with those. So we can
Yeah.
work on it if we've got to.
perfect. So we have about, let's take a look at what we got so far. Trying to load. I'll say around $300 left. So we definitely can
Okay.
get a couple extra pedals.
Did you add the used one in there for him?
I think that was a not used in Sweetwater. That was their gear exchange page,
Oh,
Okay.
gotcha.
not a demo
Okay.
one.
How much is that new Line 6 single
Oh, the
I got-
HX1.
HX1?
That's a smart move.
First person to use it too. Oh, perfect.
Could get two of those.
If I can borrow a cable from somebody because I can't afford it,
Oh no, your cables survived. They were in your
Oh.
extra cables were in a backpack.
hallelujah.
Yeah, no, your cables and power supply are all there. You're good to go there.
We're golden. We're absolutely golden. I'm
Great
the,
rig.
the one is going to make the rig.
Oh yeah, little reverb or delay at times. Perfect.
Did you? Okay. Yep.
And that puts you right at 1,500. They feel
Done.
bad.
And
They
that's
knock a couple bucks off for you.
that's a good sounding rig too.
That's a great sounding rig.
Yeah.
A Ruby, an ODR1, a Morning Glory. Can't go wrong with that setup. Honestly, I was debating buying a Morning Glory, but an ODR1. I was like, oh man, if I show up with another pedal, my wife's gonna be so upset. Tuner and a classic vibe in the HX1.
That works. That works
Great
all
rig.
day long for my gig, so
Yeah.
Dude,
and the cool thing about that Line 6 is it's flexible. You can pull in if I need to save some stuff and pull in different effects for different songs. If I take the time and learn that pedal, I think it would be pretty handy. So
that's like I use my H9 for all that stuff, and that's like an H9 for half the cost. I mean,
that's
Really-
that's
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah.
does the Ruby have any reverb in it or no?
The Ruby does not.
Okay. I've never used one, so I'm not super familiar with them.
So we may have to forego reverb right now, but
But
I lean on delay. Like I either use a slapback for some of the more chicken picking country stuff, which
Right.
kind of prints as a reverb.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't need both. Or if it's a longer, if it's a dotted eighth or an eighth note or whatever, that's going to add some atmosphere. And the rooms typically that we play, if I'm adding reverb, they're probably not going to really get the full effect of it,
Sure.
because
Might
there's
get
a
lost on
lot of
the
room
sides.
baked into that. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a
Dang.
sweet rig though, man. That was
That's a
cool.
no one, Jake, and then the two of us at least, we've not had anything like very different than what we've had on here so far. So that's cool.
Yeah, when I
Cool.
tried
Well, I think
mine,
it's a great exercise.
yeah.
It is a cool exercise, and it's like this is $1,500. That's working hard for a summer. If you're a high school kid trying to figure it out, I mean that's just hustling for a summer, getting extra stuff done. If you're new to it, that's not totally unaccomplishable. As far as
No.
a church
And
or whatever gig you're playing, that's a great rig for anything. Honestly, it's a good utilitarian rig.
Yeah, when
yeah,
I did mine, I really tried to. It was hard, but I really was like, I'm determined to get a tube amp in this. I ended up getting I got like an AC-10 or something like
there you
that
go.
with an Affinity Telecaster. Yeah,
Dude, the AC-10 is a great amplifier.
yeah,
That
yeah,
really
Great
is a good amp.
Mhm.
yeah.
I owned one. I bought one, and then my buddy Cade Fainer, I don't know if you know Cade or not, but he tours with Gabby Barrett. That's his wife.
Okay,
And they were both on American Idol. They were on the same season. They fell in love on the show.
Dang.
And I toured with Cade. They got married, and at the time they got married, I was on the road with Cade playing drums, and great guitar player. So anyway, all that to say, he was starting to tour with his wife, and I had that little AC-10, and he kind of commandeered it and just ended up we worked some kind of trade out, and I've never
Yeah.
seen it since. But what a great sounding little amp.
yeah, man.
But
Dang.
yeah, he was using it on the road. I mean, if you go and watch Gabby Barrett's, I think it was live from the gold mine. He is using my little, I think it was like one of those little maroon and black AC-10s. That's the guitar tone, and that's what aired. So
Right,
see, you can use this stuff in the real world.
right.
100% you can. So you said you're in between tour. When do you go back on the road?
We're actually, I just got back today around noon.
Oh,
We've
okay,
been out
cool.
doing some shows. We've got an entirely new show, and we're basically playing most of his new record, plus his hits. And so it was a lot to learn. And there was so much being required of me from not just a playing standpoint, but singing vocals, BGVs, some high, some low. And it required a lot of concentration. So I finally had to ditch the you know what do they call it from Houston, Capcom or whatever, what they launched the space shuttle from,
Yeah.
So I had the Boss ES8, and I had that controlling all my overdrives. I have let's see, what is it, the HX effects were my effects. I've got the big box Cali 76 that I've had
Okay.
forever, which is kind of a central part of my tone. All that stuff, it took up a lot of room, but I couldn't think with my feet. That'd be a good way to put it. I couldn't
Yeah.
think with my feet anymore, play some of these parts and sing at the same time. It was just too much. So now I've got it set up to where all of my effects live in the rack. I've got one of those little morning stars, and it's basically just laid out intro, verse, chorus, solo.
That's
And if I
great.
need a dry cut, because some songs they reach a climactic point and then the song just stops, and I can't
Yeah.
have all these effects just spilling over. So
Right.
I build myself a dry cut, or whatever you want to call it, to where
Yeah.
I can stop the sound on an instant. But yeah, that's all I've got at my feet other than a volume and a tuner. And that's really all I need. And I've got that set up with the hopes that Ableton soon I'll have that program to fire all my changes, and I won't have to touch anything with
That'd
my
be nice.
feet in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that was
but
awesome, man, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for obviously we'll talk for a couple minutes after this, but thank you so much for coming on, man, and chatting with us and where can
thank
people
you for
find you
asking.
at? Yeah, of course, dude. Like, where can people find you if they want to follow you and stuff? You know, like follow you on Instagram or YouTube or anything.
Spence Peppard on Instagram, Spence Peppard on Facebook. If I've got any other accounts floating around,
Probably
feel
Spence
free
Peppard.
to follow. I don't know how much I'll post. Um,
Yeah.
I've got a history on YouTube. I've actually got a video that if you want to see the first studio that I worked in
Yeah.
Texas at Encore Recording, you can type in my name, Spence Peppard, and just put crazy worst studio session ever. And there's a video that went viral,
Okay.
and that changed my life forever. It actually changed the life of my family because my wife actually, my wife, my sister met her husband who lived over in England through the contact that we made from that crazy viral video. So there's all this history, but it's just me basically going into a studio screaming Patsy Cline's crazy from start to finish. So,
I'm gonna put that
but
in
you
the
can,
notes of the show so people can go find it.
yeah, you can watch that one. And that happened back in 06 or 07. And my brother was engineering at the time. Now it's a total, it's just an overdub. I actually pre-recorded it and we made the video, but I've got stuff floating around from that all the way to present day. So there's all kinds of madness, but yeah, it's fun. And the cool thing about what I do is it's not something that it wasn't necessarily a dream of mine to be out on the road touring. I've always thought I would end up just living in a studio if I was going to do this. But, I've always tried to stay open to where God would lead me, or, just at least say, God, if you close the door if I don't need to walk through it, and leave it open if I do. And so
Right.
it's been really interesting to see some of the doors that he's opened and I've walked through, because I worked in Christian music. I've done a lot of Christian music my whole life. I mean, that was the first time I ever played drums. I was 11 years old playing with a Christian band. But I feel like he's pushed me into this world now because of who he's kind of made me and molded me and my character over the years to go out into the world. And we're actually doing a tour with Ann Wilson, a Christian recording artist. This next tour is going to be with Ann, which, you follow her on Instagram and you'll see a lot of people going, well, she's turning to the world. She's going out with these. And I just want to encourage, the church world to encourage your artists to get out there. And
Right.
I think it's great if you can bring that if you've got something that's important enough to say, and you believe what's in that book that you read on Sunday mornings that called the Bible, if you really believe that we're supposed to go out into the world and preach the gospel to every living creature, well, encourage people to do it. And that looks wild sometimes. And you end up in some situations, and sometimes you get to sing songs about George Strait that has a word in it that I don't say in front of my daughter.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's where I know I'm supposed to be 100%.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm getting to reach out to people that I wouldn't have gotten to reach otherwise. And they're getting to really change my life in other ways. So
Well,
it's really been great. I've gotten to grow through every experience, but especially this one. It's been neat. So I just
yeah.
want to encourage anybody that, whatever you're faced with, man, that was my prayer. Close the doors that I don't need to walk through and leave the ones open that I do. And
Well,
and hoping I find those. So
yeah. And I know I just want to add, like, I super appreciate you and the things that you've done. Like, there have been countless times I've seen stuff that you've done in, like, just your talk, praise and worship, that you'll post like a funny moment or just something like that. And I love that you're still active in those groups, and that, like, you care about those groups. I could tell that you care about, like, all the people in there, and that you just care about, like, the musician in the church too.
yeah.
And so, like, that's something, like, I really appreciate. And one of the reasons I was just like, we got to get this guy on here. And,
Well,
and like,
thank you.
you've even answered like questions I've had, like, in the past. I'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
but
That is,
yeah, I just really appreciate that. And, I just, like I said, one of the big reasons I wanted to make sure we got you on here, because, like I said, I appreciate the light that you bring like into like into a non-church perspective, but also you kind of still always stay active in that church world too to help other people, and that's something I really appreciate. So
Well, I tell you what, I love you guys and I love the church and I love the work that y'all do. And I don't think we need to break each other down. I do think that we need to dig into the word and make sure that from a theological standpoint that we really understand it the best we can. We're not going to agree on everything. As
Mm.
you can tell, getting into these forums, part of the reason why Gear Talk Praise and Worship became a thing was because they were arguing over theology in another gear group. And so that got created as a place to kind of go. But I think the church, we need each other and we need to lean on each other and at least, find common ground where we can across the board. And I think gear kind of gives us some of that common ground, which I think is
Yeah.
cool.
yeah,
And and then it can go from there and sprout from there. And so there's some core things that we all, I feel like, in this group stand on. And it's great to see guys encourage each other instead of tearing each other down. And I think that sort of needs to be the atmosphere. And I appreciate the work that y'all are doing, man. This is an honor to be on your podcast.
We
thanks,
appreciate
man.
yeah, it's been a cool adventure. We started this a little while ago, just to tell you about it. We started this a little while ago, and it both of us, Patrick works in a church full time. I just left full time ministry, and we both kind of had this like, man, there's some awesome resources out there, but like I feel like there's a market of like, the boutique amp thing's still a thing, and like we love it. We're obviously gear nerds for sure, but like we both in our churches know people who are like, I just can't afford it. And it's like, how can we bring a fun, lighthearted vibe to showing you like, nah, the $40 soul food by EHX, it'll be fine. Like
Or
you
just
got
like you're good enough already with what you have. You want to bring an 8 string guitar to worship with, like
bring it
if
in.
your heart for it is like, hey, like I just want to praise God and that's what I want to give to him and this is all I have to do it, that's good enough to do it,
Love it.
It'll do it. It'll do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think enough musicians consider that one of the most important tones that you can make is no tone at all, knowing when to stop playing,
Yep.
knowing where to lay out. And if you'll really, don't feel like you got to strum all the way through every song. Don't feel like you got to fill everything up. Some of the most impactful parts of songs is when you tacit.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so and then when you do get to crank up that soul food, that will have more impact. But all this stuff, just learn how to use the gear. Learn the
Yep.
gear that you've got, because you can get a good sound out of it. You can make it work, and it might even sound good if you
Yep.
learn it. So I
That's awesome.
think it's important.
Stay tuned for the Podbean Will It
Yes.
Worship.
Yes. 100%
Hey, let's do it again, and let's plug this thing in and just see what we get.
Oh yeah, that'd be
100%.
sweet.
Maybe when you come up to Michigan, that'll be our video. We'll save the bean for when you're in town, and we'll bring a little interface and we'll just play right and
That's great. We'll do it in person, and then I'll show y'all. Y'all can come backstage. I'll show you the rig. We'll open the drawer, and you can peer in it, and then close it right back. By the way, let me say this: it's no fun having gear in a drawer. That's
Oh yeah.
not cool. There's nothing sexy about gear that's filed away like your taxes.
that's gonna
But
turn your sign off. It's not sexy if it filed like your taxes.
no, it's just not. So
It really is though. But all right, man. Thank you so much for being on. We appreciate it.
I love you guys. Y'all take care.